Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Agile Austin Leaders Special Interest Group, April 3rd. I'm going to go through a few slides and then we'll hand over to Lani. Thanks for coming out. And we are part of the Agile Austin larger umbrella. We connect, we collaborate, we grow all things Agile. Okay. And as I said, I'm just always keeping an eye on the waiting room. Okay, Lani is our vice president, in case you didn't know. And we've got other awesome people on the board. I used to be on the board until last July. It was an awesome experience. Thank you to our board. And I tell everybody, if you ever want to say something to our board, board@agileaustin.org, shoot them an email. Tell them how great they are and stuff, right?
Max, are you wanting to share your slides right now?
Oh, wait, I'm not sharing. Oh, yeah, thanks for telling me. I'm just going ahead and just talking the whole time, Lonnie. There you go. Uh, I just had the slide on the board and then I was here. Okay, so sorry for that. Thank you, Lonnie, for calling that out before I went any further. I always tell people, if you want to be a member, just go to our site and get the info. I'm going to put just some information here in the chat, and it's just going to be great for you to go there and get the information. Sponsor, like, it's $35 a year. We put a lot of content out there on like the YouTube channel. We have sessions. We have something else coming up next week that I'm going to talk about afterwards, and we have sponsorship. But just go to our site. We have a lot of the good info there. And shout out to our sponsors. Our sponsors, I mean, it's just great to have support from Agile Velocity, SEMA, Resumex, Admeliora, and thank you to all of them, okay? Again, they are on the site. Check them out. We actually have a variety of special interest groups. And I'm just going to put a link out there and just go and check them out. What I tell everybody is sign up on Meetup, subscribe, and you'll get all the, like alerts if you don't already, okay? I think it's just great to just get all the alerts of the SIGs that we have. The leader SIG is the one that you're here in now. I've facilitated this SIG since 2010. 2010. I think I'm just a year or two more than the book club, Ned, or like you've been around for a while too, Ned, right? And stuff. So it's been an awesome journey for 16 years and we just keep on learning. Keep on learning. It's been great. I just tell everyone, if you want to volunteer and everything, that's on our site also. We're always trying to look for people to help out, be more of like an integral part of the community. It'll just be great to hear from you, okay? Always welcome. Uh, Lani's going to be here today, obviously, and she's going to speak about herself, so we'll skip on that. We have Jason, who'll be joining us May 1st. Okay, I'll be posting that and everything in the next few days. And then we've got a June speaker already. We take some time off in the summer. But if anybody has a really cool topic they'd like to share, contact me. You know, we've got some openings in the fall and all that. But hey, who can tell me what's going on next week, April 10th? Huh? While I admit a few folks here. Would someone like to put something in the chat for like next Friday, April 10th? Lani, I know you know. Who else? Ned, I know you know. I'm just going to wait until somebody puts something on the chat. There you go. Huh? Anything else? Next week, Friday, April 10th. Oh, yes, Lani. You didn't want to wait too much longer, huh? Folks, next week, April 10th, we have the Keep Austin Agile Conference, our 13th edition of it. Next Friday, we're going to have a blast. We have an awesome keynote speaker. We have awesome speakers. I'm not just saying that because I'm also speaking at it, okay, for the first time in like 5 years and stuff. But we're just gonna have a blast, right? We're gonna be there. We're gonna have breakfast, lunch, snacks, tons of coffee because someone complained about coffee in the past. So we will have coffee the whole time and tea, and we have happy hour too. We just it's just gonna be great to see people in person again. But it's also hybrid. So you know what? If you're not in Austin, feel free to join remotely and stuff. Uh, Lani, we're going to hand over to you because we want to hear about strategic foresight for agile leaders. Turn changing priorities into clear decisions. We are going to have a blast today. As I turn off, I stop sharing. I would like to take a Brady Bunch picture here on Zoom. So, no pressure if you're in the middle of eating or you're driving. But if you're not and you can turn on your camera for 10 seconds. Okay? Folks, I am going to stop sharing right now and I'm going to ask that we turn. Who can turn on their camera, please? Turn on their camera. I'm still waiting. Who can turn on their camera for the Brady Bunch picture? I have to admit Ned again because I think that he tried to turn on the camera, but it went off. He left. Okay, no pressure, but I'm telling you, turn on your camera if you can do it. Okay, taking a Brady Bunch picture here in 3, 2, 1. I did it. Yes, awesome. Hey, it's just me and you, Lonnie, but I got it. I got it. Okay, there you go. Folks, let's go ahead and get started. Lonnie, thank you for being here and handing over to you.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you got my photo. Got my hair done yesterday, just for this. No.
We see your slide. We see your slide. Yes.
All right, folks. I am hoping that you can at least participate in chat because I am not one of those speakers who speaks the whole time. I plan everything to be interactive. So if it's not, we may just end early, just FYI.
Yeah.
But I would love to have discussions, especially because really what I'm going to talk about today is so much more powerful when you do it in a collaborative setting. But before I get into that, I'll introduce myself. You can kind of see some of the things that I've done, but just briefly about me. So I consider myself a generalist because I love a variety of things, and so that's actually one of my, I guess, superpowers, as they say, that helps me to be able to bridge strategy to execution. And so I've spent 20 years working in tech and consulting. 15 years of that was marketing, and then the rest of the time being agile transformations and consulting. Recently, I have moved into higher ed, and I work at the intersection of career and workforce, education and workforce. And I feel like that makes everything even more relevant because we're talking about people who will eventually be in in their careers in these new spaces that are currently constantly in flux. Um, So I'd love to, as I'm giving this introduction, if you have heard of strategic foresight, throw that in the chat, maybe what you've heard, what you know, just kind of your level of what you might be familiarity with strategic foresight. My experience was I came across the actual term strategic foresight a few years ago. And then when I did some research, I realized, oh, this is very much elements of how I've been thinking because it requires a lot of systems thinking. It requires some looking ahead. And so throughout even my career, I've looked for signals, which we'll talk about. Um, so one experience as I look back was that I started off my career in more design and was doing like publication design And at one point, there was that crossroad, which was coding was becoming popular. So it was like, do I want to be a web designer? Do I want to get into learning HTML and all the coding? Or do I want to go more into Marcom route and into marketing? And what I realize now is that even to have posed that as a question required me to be aware of what was going on in the larger uh, industry and in the larger workforce area. And so at that time, I decided I do not want to code and went into marketing. So that is a small example of what we're going to talk about today, which is number one, how do you just even become aware of what's going on? And then number two, how do you more intentionally look at what's going on and be able to gather insights to then, like I said, make some of those better decisions? All right. So who has heard of strategic foresight? Anybody? Throw it in chat. I haven't seen anything yet. We will assume it's a new concept then. Most likely, as I go through here, you will find elements that you recognize, kind of like how I shared in my experience. So when you think about career or organization, what comes to mind when you hear the word future? Oh yeah, Max had a preview.
I was there last September.
Yes, that one was in person, so thankfully we're doing this virtual. All right, so when folks talk about the future, it can be different, kind of what they call horizons. So you might be thinking, okay, future, even this year, is future. You might be thinking a couple years out, and then you might be thinking more long term, which gets to 10 years out. So when we talk about strategic foresight, sometimes it's also referred to as future thinking. The concept itself has really been around. I think it's from the 60s. Um, and so it's been around, but it's been one of those things that more so larger companies like IBM, I'm familiar, I work there, so I'm familiar with the fact that they do strategic foresight. And then some of the other big companies will hire some of these consulting groups to do it or have somebody internal. So they've been using the strategic foresight, or at least they've been getting the reports. Whether they use them or not is always something I will not speak to. But they've been getting this information, and so what I'm seeing now, though, is there's a need, especially with the rate of change, for everybody to think about these concepts. We've been familiar with in the past using the term VUCA for the changes that are going on. This concept, I think, became a little bit more popular about 5 years ago, where now we're saying everything is brittle. There's brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. So this is the type of change that we're dealing with. Brittle, we saw this with the pandemic, where we saw supply chains totally break. So that's a big part of brittle. Like one change can then break a whole supply chain. We have anxious. That's really for people. Like we're seeing a lot of anxiety, increase in mental health, both need and support. Because of the rate of change, it takes humans a lot longer to adjust. And so we're seeing a little bit more increase in anxiety. Then we have the fact that things are non-linear. So usually it has been that something happens and then you may talk about this, especially when we talk about how AI has come into the industry and people will compare it to, oh, well, it's similar to when, cars or industrial revolution and all of that. And that is true. And at the same time, what we're seeing is that rate of change is happening every 6 months now versus in the past when there was a big industrial change we had years to adjust. Now it's like every 6 months, if not more. And so from that non-linear perspective, we're not seeing that one-to-one. It might be one-to-many in terms of what is going on. And then we get into our incomprehensible, which is just the fact that there's so much going on. There's an increase in complexity. And so it's making it difficult to say what is the solution. And I think this is also why we're seeing a lot of the like linear and binary thinking just not being able to solve for items because of the increase in complexity. There's just a lot more that's going into it. So with
And hey,
this,
Lani.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I mean, if I may just chime in very quickly,
Oh,
I think that this slide is a big data point because there's a representation of what has happened not only in the world that we're in, but in the agile community in the last 6 to 7 years. Somebody told me the Scrum Master role was one of the most looked up, sought after role on LinkedIn, like around 2018 and 19. And that's not that long ago, right? And now it's like a lot of scrum masters are changing titles to back to project managers or to some other things. It's just, and just
yeah.
even in our community, the amount of change that has happened. And I'm someone that I embrace change. I'm happy for change to happen, but you have to have I'm like an agile mindset and be able to, I mean, adapt to it. But the recognition that this change is happening faster and faster, like every time. Like this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
such a key point.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that point of view in, Max. And because it's interesting, the more that I've been doing research on, especially like AI and changing organizations and even the future of the workforce, the big headline is agility is an imperative. But it's super interesting because agility is an imperative, but agile in terms of all that's been built is actually going down.
Huh.
And
And it's
it's
like, wait a second. Wait a second.
so yeah, again, we'll kind of keep discussing that because I'm going to get into some of what we've been doing with Agile Austin and our emergence lab work. But yeah, it's super interesting because it's like, yes, one of the big things in order to be prepared and just, well, even just work in this new world, agility is just has to be part of it.
It has to be. Absolutely.
So when we talk about then foresight, I love this quote. Foresight is trying to make us see the world in a different way in order to make better decisions and have better outcomes. So so foresight has been around, like I said, for a while, and it focused initially on a lot of the research. So there were people who went and did the research. And then a strategic foresight appeared a little after that because the focus and then at that point was, hey, it's great to know all of this stuff, but how do we actually apply it? So the strategic part combining with foresight is saying not only are we gathering all this information, but we are going to make it actionable. So traditionally, it has been that, or I should say traditionally, but like if someone is using strategic foresight, they're usually looking about 10 years out, starting to look for trends. I'm going to talk a little bit, though, even how some of that has changed just this year in terms of how people are using strategic foresight. Um, so a lot of the foresight can be used both. Business has been the number one area where it has been used. Obviously, the market, anything that has to do with looking at the market, and then also for careers. this is a really great tool for careers as well. And if that's an area you're interested, feel free to reach out to me because there's some I can suggest some other books that get more into that. Um, nice comments, Max, in there. Yeah, you could totally have a whole thing about.
I'm just going at it. I'm like, don't make me rant about things now. Stay positive, Max. Stay
Yeah.
positive.
So what I want to focus on today is more looking at this from a either business, a program, or even a project initiative perspective. So first, let me talk about what we traditionally see in strategic planning. So this is something that most likely, if you're on this call, you've been part of in some way, whether actually involved in it or facilitating the activity. So what I've experienced a lot is that when there's that yearly strategic planning, there's kind of the agenda. First, it starts off with, okay, what do we want to do? What are we looking at? How do we want to grow this area? What might be other areas? And so you kind of make some big macro buckets. And then the folks may go out and do some like competitive research. Okay, if we're going to move in this area, who's going to be our competitors? They will also do some customer research, kind of reaching out, and then come back together, see what's going on, and then make decisions. The limitation of this approach is it focuses on first the organization. So how I like to think of it is um, if you're really into customer experience, you know that like rather than focusing on your product first, you'd want to focus on your customer. But in this instance, it's actually interesting because the standard strategic planning focuses on the product first, which is the organization. And then it goes out and does all the research, but it's already framed from the organization. The other limitation is on that timeline because the timeline, once they go out and look at competitive research, customer research, that's all talking about like now and maybe, 6 months to a year out. So, because your competitors are not going to have what they're going to be doing in the future, customers are going to care about what's happening now. So, you're taking it from this more point in time view. By the way, if you have any other if you see something differently or something additional, yeah, please speak up or share it in chat because a lot of this is obviously going to be my point of view plus what I've heard from others.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is it was interesting how you said that first the focus is on the organization and then on the customer, right? Sometimes if you have some examples or case studies, because my experience with having to start my company, my software development company, and all is I had to think first about customer needs and business needs. And then how can I set up a business model strategy that
Mhm.
can deliver value at an affordable price, right? It's like it
Yeah, yeah,
started from the customer first and the needs and whatever from the industries, the companies. And then I thought about how I would structure my organization. But
yeah.
it's
Got it.
interesting to see some other viewpoints too, right?
Yeah, and so I think that like yes, if you're building a product initially, you're going out to the customer, and what I think the difference here is more in the timeline of it. So you're going out to meet a customer need that's happening now. And so you go out and do your customer research, figure out your product, and you're saying, okay, like this is what the solution, we're going to put it out there. Let me show you the next one. And then this will kind of,
Please
yeah, I think I'd love to
don't
hear,
let me disrupt you,
love to
Lani.
hear your
Don't let me
thoughts.
disrupt
Oh,
you.
hey, if people talk, actually, I love it. Jeff talked about Southwest strategy was customer first. Yeah, yeah. So we've seen a lot of customer first for sure. Um, and then yes, it always goes back to the same. The difference when we look into more strategic foresight plus planning is that you start with futures futures perspective first to get broader context. So in this work, um, you think about, okay, what is a question? And I'll show an example of this. What is a question that you want to explore that's relevant for your area? So, for example, with Agile Austin, we started last year what we're calling the Emergence Lab, which we've been working on a futures project to look at the future of organizations to see like what roles, skills, and other aspects are going to be coming so that we can better prepare our members and also Agile Austin. So the question that we were asking was around the future of organizations. And so if we start from that context, so let's take it back to the business perspective. If you are a business and then you're over here thinking and starting with yourself and your customers, but let's say before that, you start to look at what's even possible and what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. You start off how I would describe it is in this first example, you're starting off your point of view from probably like this much because you're saying, this is what I'm doing, this is my customer, and then I'm maybe looking for something that's, again, a year out. Versus if you start from strategic foresight, you have a wider perspective. So you're looking for more innovation, what's interesting. You're also looking about what might change. So let's say you did plan something a year out, and then all of a sudden, like 2 years or maybe even sooner, something changes. What if you could have seen that change coming before? And so back to the point where it's more of a timeline, it's thinking about I can plan better and make better decisions if I'm looking at what might be possible. And I can also have more of a competitive edge because I'm looking more at what innovation I can adopt. So, from starting with that futures context, you then do that work and then you see, okay, what might be the impact or possible innovations for my organization? And then you're still going to, yes, look at your customer, do some of the other strategic planning. But now that you have this context as well, you can make better decisions because you can decide. And I don't know, Max, if you've seen enough in your business, long enough to say, oh, I made this decision now, but had I known this was coming, I might have made a different decision.
Yes. Yes. I mean, to the point that when I started the company, I thought this was going to be the primary service that we deliver, and we do. And 2 years forward, 70% of our revenue comes from an entirely different service than what I'd started. So that's a positive, like, oh, I made a decision and it wasn't a mistake, but that decision led to for me to discover other things that we will do. They'll be more profitable, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you learn and you adapt as you go along.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of that's still going to happen. Um, and at the same time, there are some things. The other example that I would use for the more regular planning versus like strategic foresight planning is the pandemic. So if you saw a lot of people that had to very quickly, like, because they were just going along, didn't even in their world, it wasn't a possibility that something like that would happen. And then all of a sudden, they did need to become quickly agile because they were not prepared. So a lot of them, people had to like throw everything online and make it digital and stuff like that. But you had some other folks who, and in Austin, if you're familiar with the grocery store, HEB has folks who do this kind of work, and they actually plan then full scenarios of what they would do if it happened. So they had a scenario for some sort of pandemic, and they were able to adjust faster than other companies. So that one to me,
Oh,
I'm like,
imagine that. That is awesome. That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
awesome to
And
be
so
able to.
anybody who was already moving to digital before like the pandemic was already ahead. And again, for those companies like HEB who are doing this looking forward, it can be a huge differentiator. All right, so let me talk
Very
a little
true.
bit about the foundation. So that's what I'm going to cover today. There's a lot to this, and truthfully, the big thing is once you learn some of these essentials, is to just start looking, becoming more aware and intentional with how you do it. So I am going to show you a couple things, mainly from the Institute for the Future, because that's where I was trained, um, as well as I've been being trained on the one for Futures Future Today Strategy Group. So I've kind of got a couple different approaches that I'm merging, but the foundation for all of them is very similar. You're looking at two areas. You're looking at what are called drivers of change and then signals of change. And I'll go deep into the definitions in a moment. So you're looking at those, and drivers of change, just very briefly, is more looking at macro areas, like macro thinking about what's happening in government, what's happening in economy, education, your industry. So it'd be, what's happening in tech organizations, or all of that is where you're looking at for drivers of change. Signals are more specific examples. Again, I'll share some of those in a moment. And the intent, this is how it's been. What I'm showing you here is how it's been, truthfully, up until this year for strategic foresight, where they would look about 10 years out and then gather all the information. And from then the data, both quantitative and qualitative, that they would gather, they would start to think about forecasts and scenarios. And a lot of this is requiring imagination, creativity, courage. The big thing about forecasts and scenarios is that they are not predictions of the future. The way I like to think of them is they're more stories to provoke thinking. Reading what
Yeah,
Jeff
it would be
said.
nice. Oh yeah, Jeff had a comment there and everything. If you want to take a second to go through it, but
Yeah,
it would almost be nice to have an example of this, Lonnie. If
I will. I'm about to
okay,
go.
you will. Awesome. My
I want to give
simple
you the
mind.
top level overview of kind of
There
the
you
process, and then we'll go.
share
Um,
the
so
theoretical.
Jeff was saying strategy being a decision-making framework. You still pay attention to feedback. Yes, and the horizons are much shorter. Yeah. So organizational adoption probably augments customer product. Some companies have radically changed industries, not just immediate offerings. Yes. Yeah. So definitely,
Rainbow.
Jeff, what you're saying is true. Like there are a lot of companies that already are doing elements of this. Um, I would say like really my goal, and I hear this from a lot of futurists, is that we make this more of something that everybody is aware of and not just like those really big companies or a few people. Because this concept of, like I said, people can use it in their career, which to me is just like, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Uh, and the other thing I think that it can help with as well. Like a lot of us have focused on agility and delivery. The other concept that I would love to see more of is agility and strategy. Um, so if you're constantly looking at this, you're not changing your strategy all the time, like in terms of your big buckets, but you're changing maybe some smaller things as you go. But I'd love to hear if anybody like applies that in the area where I've seen this work has been, like I said, more at that initiative level. So here at our community college, we were one of the first to have an Office of the Future, which is really awesome. So we have a futurist, and they have been putting together some of these trend reports, and then they actually start to look for, like, for example, that we're going to be piloting a digital twin for students where it is you have like this digital version that can help you and start to see, oh, hey, it looks like you've missed class. Maybe what's going on? Oh, do we not connect you to like mental health resources, financial aid, or your advisor. So it's actually like a way to read signals for the student, which is
Oh
really
my
interesting.
goodness. And the student can speak to the digital twin and say, "Hey, you know what? I need help on this. I
Yeah.
Who should I go and get in touch with for this?" And all of the
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love like Austin Community College. I mean, besides the fact that they've started to offer free tuition to high schoolers out of the
Yeah.
Austin area. I mean, that just blew my mind away, and it's just been great. But yeah,
Yeah. So
cool.
I love it because I'm all about like this future stuff and to stay again,
Yes.
innovation to me is really what it comes down to. Like you can innovate sooner and be able to bring things in.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
So the other thing I want to bring up, so again, this model that I learned was looking more 10 years ahead. But there's another futurist, her name is Amy Webb, and if you haven't seen her, what you can do is Google her name in South by Southwest. So she always gives a trends report at South by Southwest. So looking at the trends for the next 10 years. This year, though, she actually held a funeral for the trend report because she said things are changing so much that they're adjusting to focus more on convergences. So I did want to bring this up
Ooh.
is, and this is from, again, the Future Today Strategy Group, is that when I talked about those external forces, that's like these drivers. So this is something that as futurists we're always looking at like what's going on. Um, but then a lot of the power is saying, okay, what happens if those converge? So if you talk about like tech, and if you have things from tech, from economy, from uh, public health, and you see something that's merging and coming together, like what does that mean? And so they're actually starting to look more at convergences because you can do this more often than looking 10 years out. So maybe you're looking only like a year out. And so this is going to be even more powerful to look at this level now, like I said, with the rate of change, because you can see, I'm trying to think of one that might be going on right now. Um, well, for example, I've been doing some research with a group around community colleges. And one of the things that I saw in terms of signals was using more like brain adaptive technology. So we've seen that being used to help with perhaps like those who don't have limb functionality. And so they can have something connected to their brain to be able to communicate. There's multiple stories that I found that I've talked about, oh, well, if you could use that and then turn it into a game and you could help those with ADHD. Or if we had something like that, we can actually measure how well are people performing because we're going to be able to see their brain activity. So that's like a convergence of something that was happening in one area in like that medical area that's now transitioning over to education, but it's tech. And so like that actually is one of the convergences. They just put out a report. So if you go to their website, you can get the report. But one of the things they noted was about some of this tech being used in just more common ways. And so that was one example. And I was like, oh yeah, I just saw that. So it's really cool. It's really going to be interesting as we see some of these convergences. And then from there, you can start to see, okay, what are the insights I can gather from this? Okay, what does this mean then for my area? What does this mean for what we're doing? She does this for, or their company does it for big businesses. So they're looking at very big capital allocation, all that. But I've seen, like I said, especially within our community college, where we're using this for initiatives that, we're looking at for within the next year to say, okay, what's coming up? What can we use? So let me move on to then showing some examples of drivers and signals since these are the foundations. So the drivers, like I said, thinking about what is These are more like if you see something in a report, you see some quantitative data, things are shifting. There's a couple of models that you can use to look for this just to make sure you're looking broad enough. So there's STEEP, which is social, technological, economic, environmental, and political. Another common one that I think folks are more familiar with is PESTLE. So you get political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And the whole idea of having those categories is so that you don't miss something. So a lot of times, obviously, tech, we're all gonna look at tech. But it's super interesting if you start to look in some other areas, even like demographics, wealth distribution. What are some other ones? Geopolitical, like there's a whole other list of some other categories you can look at. So if we start to look at these drivers, so this is an example of what we've been doing within Agile Austin. So we started off with what is our question? So you're going to start off with framing the project. And one of the ways we do that is with a question. So we asked the question, how might organizations evolve their structure, roles, and required skills in response to AI and automation? And what future ready approaches can communities like Agile Austin adopt to stay relevant, inclusive, and empowering? So when we did an initial deep dive thinking of drivers, these are some that we came up with. I don't know if you can see them so well, so I'll name off a few. Obviously AI, but freelance growth,
A lot of AI
economic pressure.
free. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I noticed you have no DEI. Is that because of the geopolitical influence also, or?
Yeah, because we're looking at and this was not just me, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but people were looking at even you're looking at government. You're probably looking at I know especially from community college perspective, we're always looking at like what are the government because a lot of that's
Yes.
funding.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yes, and then looking at geopolitical and where do things go.
Got it. Got it.
Um,
What's the FDE? Rise of the FDE. Yeah, that one there.
I'd have to ask. I don't remember what.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, because this was feedback stickers. Yeah, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
That's the feedback sticker.
So I
Let
can't
me
remember.
see. Hold on.
Yeah, you have like demographics, like four generations working together, mass retirement.
Yes. Mhm.
So back to when I was talking about, you could even start at this level with a question and then look at the drivers and then start to say convergence. If some of these converge, so if you have freelance growth plus four generations or working together, and then you have an eroding certification ecosystem, like what could that mean? Oh, well, and economic pressure of cost of things. So again, I've been doing future work on education. So in my head, I'm already connecting that side. So I'm seeing how, like, okay, well, then how people get the education is going to have to change and it's going to have to be, it looks like from a cost perspective and from a time perspective, because if they're looking at like certifications, like people are looking for different ways to share their skills. So you can start even at this level thinking about what happens when some of these intersect. Again, that's why having the different areas to think about it, like pestle or steep, is really great because you then get that full picture view instead of just looking at your industry and your space. All right. I know now. I'm like, what is it? I don't know.
It's interesting to take the feedback and everything and see what the thoughts are out there. Really is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then when we talk about signals, signals are where like future thinking is signals are the key ingredient. To me, they're just like the magic, like it's so interesting. Because they're really specific, concrete stories. So if our drivers are more those macro trends, we want more specific examples of signals. And so some of this can be just even thinking about like, oh, what did you hear from a friend? So when I was doing my training, we were doing a project that was focused on climate change and specifically like people moving. And I just happened to talk to my friend, and she was talking about how in Asheville, like everything was flooding, and how that used to be one of those areas people wanted to move for to, but now not so much. Like that right there is a signal. And so that's something I wrote down. Or you can go out and look. This is where like AI has gotten really helpful. As long as your prompts are good. I was doing this for another project where I was using AI to come up with signals because I already had stories, or not stories, sorry, questions that I was asking around different areas. So, for example, let me show you what we were doing with Agile Austin. So we have our question, and then we had like sub questions to help us say, okay, what kind of questions, if this is what we're trying to get to, what might be questions around like wealth distribution, education that I would want to get more information on. The big thing about this stage is you're not solutioning, you're not trying to figure it out, you're really exploring. And so we go out then and look for specific signals. So again, specific stories, and then maybe put down like why is that important? We're also looking at those at different levels. So we would look maybe specifically for Agile, but then also we were looking at tech organizations to look at for those, and then perhaps something that's just more US global that we need to consider. So there's a lot around with signals, a lot you can do with AI. I mentioned at the beginning how this is a collaborative process, and it really is, because if you're the only one doing it, you're looking from your perspective, your bias, like where the sources you're going from. But if you have a group of people, they have all their networks, their different sources. So, and they can even have like different perspectives. It was interesting because the one that I'm working on is focused on community college. I was doing some signal searching and found something about, um, oh no, now I forgot what it was. Something about uh about data grids or something. I can't remember. It was something about grids and data. And what my colleague then joined, and we were talking about everything, and she's like, "Oh yeah, we're actually doing that at our community college." And I was like, "Oh, like that's cool." Like I had just I remember what it was, and this might be interesting for you. It was about the increase in fraud in colleges for people who get financial
Ooh,
aid. And
that's
so
a
I had found
big
the story.
problem. I've heard that that's a huge problem.
Yeah, yeah. So
What? Yeah,
I had not heard that too much about it because I don't work in that area
yeah.
in financial aid. But I had found the story based on the questions. And then, like I said, my teammate came on, and she works at Houston, and she told me, oh yeah, that's a big problem for our financial aid team. Like they have to check this and this, they have to go through that. And I was like, oh wow. So now I've got, actually both of us have found a signal, like the same signal, um, from different sources. And that right there can be a way of showing this is something that is really emerging. And so it's something that you need to pay attention to. So having a team is really, really important with this work. All right.
Yeah,
Um,
and the thing I love about, sorry, Lonnie. Oh,
no, go ahead.
I love that by using this approach of signals, it's almost as if we're putting even more emphasis on those feedback loops, which are such a key aspect of like an iterative, agile product development mind, right? You need
Definitely.
feedback, like you need feedback. So now it's like even the emphasis on signals, like learn to see the signals, learn to like understand them, have a mindset that you want to have those signals out there in place. I can't say how many times I work with clients and everything, and they say certain things that we miss,
Yeah.
and we build products that look phenomenal, features that are awesome, but that's not what they were signaling. That's not what they were saying at certain points. And sometimes we get into our like, look at what I can do, and I even use some AI to do this and everything. It doesn't matter how much you use AI if it doesn't generate value. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
I think that's a great point. And I agree. When I took the training and was starting to get more into this, I do see it, like I said, as more agility for strategy and agility in a different way, right? Because we're not
Yes.
changing strategy all the time. So everybody's gonna be like, oh, but we don't want to change our strategy all the time. That
Oh,
true.
you know,
So I'm talking about something when I'm talking about agility for strategy, I think it's something that's more that can be again more proactive
yes.
to change, more resilient. And I love that point you talked about feedback loop, because this is something that you don't necessarily do just once, and especially now, like I talked about with the
Yes.
convergences, this is something like I plan on having, continuing to build something out that's focused on like career workforce, because that way I can keep adding signals and start to see. So it's very much a dynamic work versus like once at a time, which is what the trend reports were more.
Mhm.
And I do want to show, so I'm going to bring over our Miro board from the Emergence Lab. I do want to show like what is one of the like next steps in this when I talked about like forecast scenarios. So these are different ones that we've drafted. So these are examples. So for example, this is one where they took the signal of declining engagement. What is the impact of Gen Z and Gen Alpha on the future workforce? Agentic AI as a driver, business need agility and resilience, and then job title changes. And they said over the next decade, the rise, or rather decline, of collaboration skills and focus will result in the siloed hero employee and in decreased alignment of business goals. Or another one in 2034, the disconnect workforce lacks clarity and vision. To address this, leadership qualities even more important. This right here is, again, not meant to tell the future. But from this, I can start to say, oh, if this is a potential future, what do we as an organization need to do? And so if you're thinking about this, if you oversee like any agile organization or just an organization, if you're saying, oh, this, there might be a decline in collaboration skills, and focus. Oh, Aaron, I'm not sharing a link. I'm just showing it on the screen. Yeah. Uh, if there's this decline and we're starting to see this, and that's going to result in business goals, what do we need to do? Or it might be even asking the question, are we seeing this in our organization? So then you can start to ask questions and get to that point where you get to see the impact on your organization. And then, like, we've got some other ones. I'm trying to, I think I liked, yeah, this one's also interesting. Signal permanent labor deficits. Oh, I love that. When the communities that taught agility forget to apply it to themselves. Here are some other signals around the, and then drivers of volunteer economy collapse, brand obsolescence versus value persistence. So this one could be in 2034, the convergence of volunteer burnout, credential irrelevance in a generation of practitioners who never experienced community-based professional development has reduced a critical gap. Organizations navigating AI-driven transformations have access to powerful tools, but lack the human networks, trusted relationships, and lived practitioner wisdom to use them well. So
Ooh,
again,
that's
that
a
might be
good
some.
one. That's a good
I think
one.
I think that's Sid. So we can thank her.
Way to go, Sid. Now it's interesting. Now it's like 2034, exactly 2034,
We
right?
we were doing
Okay,
it 10 years out, but and
10
so
years out.
just
Got it.
more
That was a
for a
good one.
wording
Yeah.
perspective when you do
Uh,
it. But that way you're looking at some sort of time horizon.
mhm, mhm. And
Um,
just a time check. Hey, Lani, I know time flies. We'll wrap up in a few minutes, but
yes, definitely. So from here, then again, we're going to have some discussions. And so actually circle back to keep Austin agile. We are going to have some of this work there where people can interact with some of what we've learned and some of the signals that we found. Again, back to wanting more community involvement. This is a great way to do that, and to kind of see, okay, if this is what we're seeing, for example, um, we're seeing more AI, more collaboration with AI teammates. and previously it was human teammates, what changes and what do we keep versus what do we change? So those are, so I'm moving things around. So those are some of the next places to go. Again, you don't necessarily need to write a report from all this work, but you can definitely take some insights and come up with some solutions and share. All right. We don't have time for questions, but if you want to reach out to me, I haven't been as active on LinkedIn, but I do check it. Um,
How
but
often do you check it, Lani? How often do you check it? Just
every week,
asking.
every week.
Every week. Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. That counts.
But I love talking about this work and especially seeing how it can be more applicable to like our communities and our community spaces. So I think that's really, really cool. And like I said, I just gave a brief overview on what I consider the core topics, which are drivers and signals, because you don't have to do a whole futures project. You can just say, okay, what's the question that I want to ask for my area, my initiative, my project, my organization? And then where can I start just noticing maybe it's because I'm reading, so maybe I need to gather that together. And so once you start to see it on a map, all the different signals, oh, okay, where are those convergences? And if you even just get to the convergences, again, that's really powerful. All right, I will be
Drivers
done.
and signals. Drivers. Lonnie, thank you so much for sharing this. This is so aligned with a lot of things that I am presently doing now. And I just have to formalize and even, not to say formalize, but double click on it and really, deep dive into it because things change very fast. And even if, as an individual, an organization, or company, you might be doing very well right now, you might
Mhm.
not be by December.
Yeah.
You
Oh, yeah.
might not be by December. And then you're reacting. You're reacting to, clients you've lost and things that are happening and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Thank you, Lonnie. Thank
You're
you for being
welcome.
here. Folks, thanks for joining. I know people are in lunch break, they're doing other stuff. It's not as easy to interact, but thanks for joining. We will be sending the recording out on the YouTube channel. And have a good Friday until the next time.
On Good
Okay.
Friday. Good Friday on Good Friday.
Oh, have a good Friday. Yeah, I think that can have an impact on people's schedule. Good Friday. But hey,
Very much
we're
so.
here.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care, Lonnie. Cheers. I'll stick around till we're all done. Any last minute comments before we call it a day? All right. Thanks for joining and take care.